Amazing discovery, single dad exposes his unbelievable connection to beaten paralysis survivor. Jake crouched beneath the rusting hood of an old truck, a familiar comfort in the chaos of his life. 3 days past due on the rent and the weight of single parenthood pressed down hard on his shoulders. His hands, stained with grease, fumbled through the worn seats when his fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. Intrigued, he uncovered an antique bracelet, its delicate engravings catching the light just right. Alex. The name resonated like a thunderclap. He had heard whispers about Alex, the man forever changed by an accident, their town's untold story steeped in shame. Could he be connected in some way? A mix of anger and curiosity surged through him. He knew the injustice of Alex's situation. The whispers at the diner always spoke of how Alex had been wronged, how powerful forces had shifted blame and left him crippled in more ways than one. But Jake felt something deeper. Did he have the strength to confront these demons? Did he even have the will to stand up for Alex when murmurs of disdain filled their small community? Taking a deep breath, Jake imagined his daughter's face. Lucy, with her wild curls and stubborn spirit, deserved someone brave, someone who wouldn't let guilt dictate their choices. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The stakes were rising. Could he, a mechanic struggling to keep the lights on at home, become an advocate for a man who'd suffered so deeply? Each day leading up to the fundraiser he'd envisioned felt heavier and more charged. Doubt threatened to choke him. As neighbors eyed him skeptically, he grappled with the knowledge that more than a few wouldn't stand alongside him. He pictured Lucy looking up at him, searching for the hero she believed him to be, and the sheer weight of his fear tethered him to a reality he couldn't escape. What if I fail? He muttered to the empty garage, as memories of his wife haunted him, a ghostly reminder of what it meant to lose. She had always believed in righting wrongs, yet their world was now a distant memory, the loss gouging a wound too raw. Tension hung thick in the air as he navigated sleepless nights filled with blurry thoughts and crippling anxiety. He had reached out to Alex, unaware of the friendship fate would build. They spoke late into the night, bonding over shared stories of vulnerability and struggle. And in those moments, the lines blurred, Jake saw pieces of himself mirrored in Alex's challenges. The frustration, the anger, the fight for a voice, it all resonated within him, forging an unbreakable bond. The day of the fundraiser loomed ahead, a menacing shadow taunting Jake's resolve. Lucy tried to reassure him, but even her spirited faith was a fragile shield against his own spiraling self-doubt. As his hands trembled while writing down his speech, Jake felt the enormity of an unwritten future crashing down on him. Would he stand before the townsfolk and unveil the truth of Alex's heartbreaking story? Would they listen? Just moments before he was set to take the stage, a figure from the past stormed through the crowd, sending shockwaves through Jake's heart. The air felt electrified, and everything around him faded into oblivion. Would this revelation shatter his fragile determination and silence both his voice and Alex's? The looming tension was palpable, leaving Jake on the precipice of an uncertain fate, his mind racing with a whirlwind of what-ifs. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. Recognition struck him like a lightning bolt. The figure crossing through the crowd wasn't just a person from his past, it was a specter from the worst chapter of his life. Hank, carrying a weight of memories Jake thought he'd buried deep, framed in a wild-eyed fervor, approached with an undeniable urgency. "Jake!" Hank called, urgency saturating his voice. It echoed through the crowd, drawing judgmental gazes towards Jake. The uncomfortable murmurs and raised eyebrows from onlookers coiled around Jake like a noose. He broke into a cold sweat, grappling with the dual burden of fear and anger that surged within him. Memories of past confrontations with Hank collided with the weight of his present mission. What do you want, Hank? Jake snapped, unwilling to let the past disrupt his moment of purpose. Hank's eyes flickered with a depth of emotion that surprised Jake. I came to warn you, he gasped, panting from the effort of pushing through the gathering throng. They're not who you think they are. They're all in on it. Jake's confusion deepened. The fundraiser had been intended to reveal the truth about Alex's plight, but the revelation that Hank, a once familiar ally, now stood as an adversary, unsettled him. What are you talking about? Jake retorted, frustration spilling into his voice. The sight of Lucy, clutching a frayed stuffed animal and glancing nervously between him and Hank, compounded his rage. He felt the keen sting of responsibility to shield her from conflict, yet the treachery of the past gripped tighter than any familial vow. You're risking it all, Hank pressed, desperation etched across his features. They'll turn on you. They already have plans. This was no longer just a struggle for Alex, it had become a struggle for his own truth, for the legacy of the life he wanted to build for Lucy. Taking a deep breath, he waded through the tumult of his emotions, forcing clarity to the surface. Could Hank be warning him out of genuine concern, or did he have ulterior motives? Why should I believe you? Jake asked, the words escaping like hot air. It felt like a challenge thrown into the open field of secrets. He could hear the murmurs swelling around him, feel the judgment from those who had always doubted him. Hank leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Because I know the truth about Alex. His accident wasn't an accident. It's more than you think. Every contemplation cascaded into a realization. Should he trust this very person who once dragged him into darkness? Behind each mouthful of doubt lay the boiling clash of urgency. He thought of his daughter's unwavering trust, the higher calling that came from taking a stand. In that moment, uncertainty turned tangible. Jake felt a flicker of opportunity within him. If there was a truth to uncover, he had to start digging deeper not only for Alex's sake but for his own. Standing before the growing crowd, the weight of obligation began feeling less like an encumbrance and more like a catalyst propelling him forward. Jake recalled Alex's words, determination and desire to reclaim his voice. He could relate now more than ever, and it ignited a flame within him. Whatever you've got, spill it, Jake challenged Hank, the tremor in his voice replaced with newfound tenacity. I'm done living in fear. The tension hung taut like a wire, waiting for a spark. With the crowd's gaze fixated on him, Jake felt the fine line between failure and truth harden beneath him. Would he seize this unraveling moment and confront the depth of deceit, or would the demons of self-doubt once again silence him? Hank's expression morphed, a hint of reluctant admiration glazing over his anxiety. Meet me at the old warehouse tonight, he said with a low voice, urgency filling the gaps. We need to discuss everything before it's too late. Jake hesitated. What lay ahead could either solidify his chance to stand for justice or plunge him deeper into a quagmire of deceit. But one thing was clear: he was no longer merely a mechanic or a single father, he was becoming a figure armed with a purpose. A singular question pressed against his mind: was he prepared to confront the risks that lay ahead? With the weight of a new mission aligning against the shadows of his past, Jake took in a breath, ready to face whatever awaited him beyond the threshold of the unknown. Jake's heart raced as he wrestled with the implications of Hank's revelation. The old warehouse, a haunt of forgotten memories, now loomed ahead like both a promise and a threat. He envisioned its decaying walls, a vessel of secrets and betrayals belonging to a life he thought he had escaped. Did he truly want to return to those depths? As the sun dipped below the horizon, the cool evening air intertwined with his anxieties, sending a shiver down his spine. The warehouse's shadow cast by the last light of day emphasized the demons that danced in the corners of his mind. Each step he took forward felt heavier, charged with uncertainty. Was he seeking justice, or merely reliving past mistakes? He glanced at Lucy, her innocence a stark contrast to the turbulence that churned within him. Remembering Alex's struggle against his paralysis ignited a quiet fury. No more could he allow fear to dictate his choices. Not for himself, and not for Lucy. Arriving at the warehouse, Jake's breath caught in his throat. The dimly lit space echoed the past, a tangible reminder of the man he used to be, when hope and despair intertwined. He had spent countless nights working late, drowning in grease and metal, attempting to fix things he couldn't understand. Now he stood on the precipice of tearing down the walls of a deeper deception. Inside, the air smelled of rust and dampness. The shadows danced menacingly, and he felt them watch him. He waited, wrestling with the urge to turn back. Every instinct told him to retreat from this haunting space, yet a burgeoning determination anchored him firmly in place. For years, he had been the silent observer of his own life, shackled by the fear of failure. Today, he would break free. Then, a faint creaking sound pulled his attention. Hank emerged from the gloom, his face trying to mask a tumult of emotions. They stood in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Jake's anger and frustration simmered just below the surface, but he held them at bay, channeling the energy into conviction. "What do you know about Alex?" Jake demanded, feeling the weight of the moment. There was little room for pleasantries. Hank's expression flickered, hesitating before laying bare the truth. The accident, it was staged. Someone wanted him out of the way. The words came tumbling out, desperate and urgent. Jake's mind raced, piecing together a puzzle that had never made sense. Why would anyone want to hurt him? Hank shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting away from Jake's piercing gaze. Because Alex knew too much. He was digging into things that didn't sit well with powerful people. When he got too close, well, they silenced him. Shock coursed through Jake. Alex, the resilient warrior who once stood tall against life's challenges, had become a target? Who would go to such lengths to eliminate him? Jake's world teetered on the edge of chaos. Why should I believe you? The question hung heavily in the air. He felt compelled to push back against the tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Hank stepped closer, desperation in his voice. Because the same people are watching you now, Jake. They think you're still a pawn, but you have the power to turn the tables. The realization washed over Jake with startling clarity. Hank was right. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth for Alex. Each step Jake made from here on would draw him deeper into a conspiracy threatening everyone he loved. The urgency of the moment ignited a visceral understanding within him. Jake needed to act not only to protect Alex but to shield Lucy from the shadows that loomed. He'd spent too long being a bystander in his own life, it was time to reclaim his narrative. "Let us find out who's behind this," Jake said, his voice steady and resolute. "Let us expose the truth." He sensed the shift in the room as determination solidified around him. A faint smirk crept onto Hank's face, relief mingling with something more profound hope. But the moment was short-lived as the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the vast space, a stark reminder that they were not alone. The ground beneath Jake's feet felt as though it was shifting. The confrontation was no longer a distant possibility, it was imminent. Would he be ready when it came crashing down? The weight of his new resolve surged alongside the anxiety coiling tightly in his gut. Jake looked at Hank, an unspoken pact solidified between them. They would fight together. The battle had just begun, and its outcome was anything but certain. In that instant, the bright fluorescent lights flickered ominously overhead, illuminating the dark corners of their newfound mission and the looming adversaries hidden within. The time had come to embrace the fight ahead. Would they expose the darkness, or would it consume them instead? The footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously like a harbinger of trouble. Jake's heart hammered against his chest, a steady drumbeat of urgency that heightened his senses. This was at the moment where he either became the man he wanted to be or slipped back into the shadows. Hank's eyes darted toward the source of the sound, their previous resolve shifting to a shared panic. Jake clenched his fists, adrenaline surging, pulsing through his veins like an electric current. "We need a plan," he whispered, voice low and tense. Hank gestured towards a pile of metal crates stacked against the far wall. We can hide behind those. They won't see us if we're quick. There was a flicker of determination in his tone that resonated with Jake. It was as if they were both reawakening a part of themselves long dormant. In a silent agreement, they both slipped behind the crates just as a group of shadowy figures entered the warehouse. Each figure reeked of authority and danger, their confident stride sending a chill down Jake's spine. Fear twisted in his gut, but he forced himself to breathe, to focus. Listening intently, he caught snatches of their conversation, fragments that ignited a fresh fire within him. It's not just Alex anymore. We can't risk him connecting the dots, one figure asserted, a sharpness to his voice that commanded respect. Jake exchanged glances with Hank, recognizing the names they were invoking, the stakes that were being raised. They're talking about us, Jake thought. This wasn't merely about Alex anymore, they had strayed dangerously close to the core of something much bigger, and now they were targets too. I think we should record this, Hank whispered, pulling out his phone, his hands trembling slightly. Jake raised his eyebrows, both impressed and apprehensive. Hank was stepping up, taking a risk that could backfire. If we can capture evidence, it'll give us leverage, Hank added, urgency lacing his voice. Jake nodded, and a fierce determination ignited in him. Do it. But be careful. The weight of their mission was sinking in, an awareness of their role in a much larger game. He felt the familiar tendrils of fear coiling around him but fought against it. They weren't helpless anymore. As Hank pressed record, Jake focused on the figures, narrowed his gaze, his resolve sharpening. He studied their movements, their body language. These were not just men, they were harbingers of the storms that marred his life. Would Alex's fate mirror his if they continued to expose the darkness? Would he become a casualty in this fight? Suddenly, one of the figures turned, as if sensing their presence. A cold sweat broke over Jake, and he froze, heart racing. The man's eyes scanned the area, and for a split second, Jake felt the weight of their shared existence. He could almost hear the thoughts prickling along the man's mind, a clear reminder that they were not safe, not yet. Back away, Jake. Now, Hank hissed, his urgency penetrating through his own fear. Just as Jake began to comply, the figure turned fully, recognition flickering across his face. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Instinctively, he felt a surge of protectiveness, not just over himself and Hank, but for Alex and Lucy too. He couldn't let this man's recognition be a signal for violence. He had to assert power in a situation sown with uncertainty. I'll distract him, Jake mouthed to Hank before stepping out from behind the crates, heart pounding like a war drum. Halt! Who are you? The man barked, confidence tinged with confusion. Jake swallowed hard, the play of emotions swirling inside him. I'm the one you've been keeping an eye on. And I'm here to expose you. Every fiber of Jake's being screamed for him to retreat. Yet, something profound shifted within him. This was his line in the sand. No longer a pawn, here was a man ready to face his adversaries. He could still see Hank reflecting relief and fear behind him. The path ahead remained perilous, but at this moment, Jake could taste something closer to freedom. The shadows had stirred, and now he was ready to confront them head-on. Would his burgeoning confidence be sufficient to shield him from the consequences of challenging a world riddled with secrets? How much was he prepared to lose in this fight? As their eyes locked, a new weight emerged in the air, setting the stage for what lay ahead, a confrontation that would either solidify his place in this battle or doom them all. Jake maintained eye contact with the man, a dangerous game of wills flickering like a flame between them. The shadows shifted, also revealing the tension in Hank's posture behind him, a reluctant sentry caught between loyalty and fear. This was the turning point, there was no turning back now. What do you want? Asked the man, his voice laced with irritation instead of outright hostility. Perhaps he was intrigued or amused. Jake's throat tightened. He was desperately searching for the right words, but all that surfaced were fragments of half-formed plans. I want the truth, he stammered, willing himself to sound more incensed than uncertain. Truth? The man laughed, a rough bark that cut through the dusty silence of the warehouse. You're veering into murky waters, kid. You have no idea what you're talking about. That laughter triggered Jake's remaining courage. He stepped forward, suddenly aware of the thin line that separated bravery from recklessness. You think you can intimidate me into silence? Jake shouted, each word bursting from him with an unexpected ferocity. I'm tired of being treated like a pawn in your games. The silence that followed was palpable. Jake's heartbeat thundered in his ears as the man studied him, carefully weighing the threat this unexpected defiance posed. The figures behind him shifted slightly, revealing flickers of curiosity mingled with annoyance. Do you even know what you're getting into? The man finally answered, his voice dropping to a low conspiratorial tone. This isn't just about you or your little friend. We're talking about forces you can't comprehend. A chill ran down Jake's spine. Did he truly grasp the gravity of his challenge? Even as fear gripped him, another spark ignited from the depths of his resolve. I don't care about the forces at play. I care about the people you're hurting, Alex. Lucy, I want to let you do this. There was something in Jake's words that sparked a shift in the man's demeanor. Gone was the dismissive air, now there was a glint of something almost impressed in his gaze. Is that right? You're willing to stand up for them, knowing what it might cost? Yes, Jake replied without hesitance. Even as his mind ran through calculations of possible consequences, his heart turned the wheel toward unwavering commitment. This was no longer about survival but standing firm against the chaotic winds growing all around them. Hank's voice cut through the tension, shaky yet filled with an undercurrent of support. Jake, we should know. Jake turned his head, issuing a brief smirk of reassurance. This is my fight. Back me up. The man grinned at Jake's audacity, leaning forward with interest, but there was no warmth in it, only a predatory gleam. You think you can handle everything this may unravel? You think standing up to me is enough? Enough for me to at least try, Jake replied, solidifying his position. Though uncertainty lurked at the edges of his consciousness, every doubt was overshadowed by a burning ambition to claim his narrative rather than let others dictate it. In that charged moment, the reality of the situation settled heavy on Jake's shoulders. Every word spoken now could tilt the scales toward either resolution or destruction. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but something noble was burgeoning within him, a realization of the strength it took not just to confront foes but to reveal his own vulnerabilities while striving for justice. Fine, the man suddenly said, rising to his full height. A wave of displeasure passed among the others. If you're that eager to play, I'll give you a chance. But know this, the game is rigged, and you're just a pawn trying to strut like a king. Jake's breath hitched, the stakes becoming clear. This fight was no longer just personal, it was a dominion of emotions, of risks that could entangle everyone he loved. Was he prepared for the darkness that might lurk beyond? A confident nod coursed through him as he recognized the pivotal thread of opportunity. Then let me learn the rules. I refuse to be anyone's pawn anymore. But as Jake locked onto the man's steely gaze, he sensed that they were treading very close to a line that could not be uncrossed. The revelation of what he might learn, what could ensue from this confrontation, changed everything he thought he knew about himself. In his chest, a fusion of courage and trepidation blossomed into a heady resolve, binding him deeper into the fray. Would this new venture render him a hero or a target? Would he be strong enough to keep those he cared for safe? With this inward clarity forming, he braced for the consequences of stepping fully into the light. And there it was, the bait. You really think you can do this? You think you have a grasp on our world? The man leaned even closer, malice dribbling from his presence. Let us see just how far you're willing to go. With the tension crackling in the air, Jake watched the man, a visceral urgency pulsing through him, aware the real battle was just beginning. The next moment could unravel everything he had fought so hard to defend. Would he leap into the unknown or fold under the weight of expectation? Jake felt the weight of the man's words settle heavily in the space between them. How far you're willing to go? Each syllable reverberated, highlighting the growing stakes of the game he had suddenly decided to play. The air was thick, almost electric, charged with an unspoken challenge that clung to the walls of the warehouse. He could feel Hank's anxious gaze, a silent plea that urged him to reconsider. But Jake's mind was racing, piecing together fragments of his strategy. He knew he had to seize control of this encounter, to redefine the terms of engagement. "You'd be surprised what I can endure," he said, meeting the man's eyes with a firm resolve, despite the roiling uncertainty within him. The man chuckled, enjoying the newfound tension. Endurance is one thing, knowing how to play the game is another. Jake stepped even closer, allowing his instincts to guide him. "Then teach me the rules. I have everyone's lives at stake, and I won't back down." His voice, steady and unwavering, sounded alien yet liberating. "Ambition can be perilous," the man replied, his predatory grin widening. "But it can also be a keen ally. You want to protect them? Prove it. Start by understanding your weaknesses." With each invitation, Jake felt the audacity of his own spirit blossoming. If previous experiences had taught him anything, it was that vulnerability often could unveil hidden strengths. "So what's the first lesson?" The man paused, studying him intently, then gestured toward the shadows where his companions lingered. "Knowledge is power. Meet my people. They might enlighten you provided you can keep their respect." Jake's heart raced at the prospect of being thrust deeper into a world he barely comprehended, but a determination surged within him. He chose to embrace his fear as a catalyst rather than a hindrance. "Then let's get to it." The man moved sideways, revealing a group of individuals who had remained in the shadows, each a testament to the intricate landscape of loyalty and fear that Jake was beginning to navigate. They wore expressions both calculating and fascinated, and Jake sensed he was being sized up as much as he was gazing at them. As he moved closer, Jake was struck by the diversity of the group. Some appeared hardened by their past experiences, scarred yet resolute, while others exhibited an intensity that spoke to a fierce complexity beneath their surfaces. It was both intimidating and invigorating. He had to engage on a level that was more mental than physical. He eyed each face, searching for respect like an anchor within this turbulent sea. "What do you need to know about me?" Jake asked, his voice clear despite the whirlpool of emotions within. "You need to understand the game," a woman with sharp features replied, stepping forward. "It's not merely about strength. It's about reading people. Knowing when to gamble, when to fold." Jake scrutinized her, trying to grasp the depth of her insight. "And how do I learn that?" "By observing," she said, her gaze piercing. "By confronting your own reflections here." She gestured around them, hinting at unseen complexities. "You think you're uniquely in danger? Every one of us has our demons, and if you can't acknowledge yours, you'll stumble." His heart raced at the idea of vulnerability. Could that truly be his catalyst? The realization struck him, sharper than any blade. His journey wasn't solely about facing external fears but also confronting his intrinsic limitations. "I'm willing to confront mine," Jake affirmed, his pulse echoing determination. "Good. Then let us put that to the test," the man interjected with a satisfied glint. "But remember, facing your demons is just the beginning. This world thrives on deceit, power plays, and sometimes, brutal truths." With that, Jake felt a new realm of possibilities bloom before him. Each breath seemed to sharpen his perception. He was standing on the precipice of enlightenment, the opportunity to discover what he truly was made of. Yet as the veils of uncertainty began to lift, a chilling thought flickered across his mind. Could realization of his true self lead to an annihilation he was unprepared to handle? "Remember," the man warned, studying Jake's conflicting emotions like a hawk targeting its prey. "Every choice has consequences. Are you prepared for what lies ahead?" The path ahead pulsated with uncharted territory. Would he emerge resilient, or would his awakening expose him to a deeper darkness? Each minute raised new questions, layered on top of the burden of the fight he had already committed to. As Jake looked deeper into the faces surrounding him, both hope and trepidation intermingled, setting the stage for the next chapter of his life, a confrontation not just with external adversaries, but a battle against the fears he had kept hidden even from himself. And as he dove deeper into this murky abyss, he felt the edges of his narrative sharpen into focus. What truths awaited him in the shadows? The murmur of anticipation enveloped the warehouse as Jake's heart thudded in rhythm with the pulse of his gathering instincts. The faces surrounding him, each etched with stories of trials and tribulations, were now the canvas upon which he would paint his next moves. Jake inhaled deeply, shifting his focus from sheer survival to strategic engagement. "All right," the woman commanded attention with a flick of her wrist, "let's start by identifying the demons we all harbor. What's your greatest fear?" Unprepared for such direct scrutiny, Jake hesitated, but the question was a boulder rolling downhill, gaining momentum. He had stumbled through life escaping layers of vulnerability, avoiding questions that might expose him. But vulnerability was the key, he now understood. He clenched his fists, drawing courage from the specters of those he wanted to protect. "I fear letting the people I care about down," he confessed, the admission spilling from his lips like poison turned benign. The words surprised even him, but beneath the surface, they echoed a deeper truth, a perpetual reminder of past failures that haunted him. "I've lost people before, I can't lose anyone again." The group listened intently, the atmosphere thickening with Jake's raw honesty. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to something akin to respect. The woman nodded, as if she sensed the weight of Jake's gravity shift. "Fear is a tool," she replied, her voice measured yet electric. "Use it as a compass, not a straitjacket. What you fear the most can guide you to where you need to grow. But you must recognize it, acknowledging that truth is your first victory." Jake absorbed her words, his mind ablaze with potential paths of growth. Instead of seeing his fear as an anchor, he grasped its utility, transforming paralysis into propulsion. But clarity didn't extinguish the underlying dread that simmered just beneath the surface. "Now," the man said, his tone shifting to a commanding authority, "you will engage them." He gestured to the people around, signaling Jake to connect with one of them. "The first step is finding common ground. Discover their fears, and you might just discern yours." Jake's instincts kicked in, spurred by an urgent need to validate his newfound resolve. He approached a burly man whose brooding expression spoke volumes. "What do you fear?" Jake asked, surprising even himself with his audacity. The man's gaze remained hard, yet a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Losing control. The roots of my past tormented me. I let them dictate my life until I flipped the narrative." A resonance pulsed between them. Jake felt the man's conviction ignite something sacred within him. "Then how did you regain it?" "I used to let the past define me, now, I define my past. I'm not bound by it. Each day is a new choice." As their conversation flowed, Jake found himself dissecting not only the man's revelations but his own emerging identity. He was discovering layers within, unraveling the tightly wound adrenaline of ambition and burden alike. One by one, members of the group shared their fears, offering glimpses of their struggles while Jake reciprocated with his own vulnerabilities. Each interaction chipped away at his previous self-doubt, replacing it with insight and expansive potential. But as the atmosphere shifted to mutual transparency, Jake felt shadows creeping at the edges of his newfound clarity. The harsh realities of their world seeped in, reminding him that understanding was merely part of the game. "Recognize this," the woman interjected, her piercing gaze locking onto his. "Fear will always exist, it's a constant. But how you navigate it determines your outcome. You must choose to use it as a springboard, not a prison." Inwardly digesting her words, Jake resolved to take proactive steps toward embracing that fear instead of evading it. Could he cultivate a vision for himself that wrapped fear in determination? As the group continued to share, Jake's resolve solidified, shaping into something tangible and fierce. Yet, the man who had pulled him into this treacherous maze remained a looming presence, a reminder that he played chess while they merely scrapped for pieces. "Reflect," the man said suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. To win, you will have to pit your spirit against the mind of the hunter. And so Jake wrestled with the juxtaposition of growth and conflict as he confronted the challenge laid before him, a bleeding heart within a battlefield of wolves. The stakes were steep, his fear palpable, but in that crucible, he would forge his path forward. As the shadows lingered, Jake realized there was more at play than mere instruction. The consequences of his growth would soon intersect with the very demons he once feared. What would he risk to protect those he cherished most? His thoughts spiraled into uncertainty as one question eclipsed all others: how far was he willing to go to transform his fear into fuel for the battles that lay ahead? The intensity of the warehouse pulsed around Jake as he absorbed the weight of each shared story, the collective fears becoming a tapestry of motivations and vulnerabilities. Yet amid this atmosphere of raw honesty, a knot twisted in his gut, a restless urgency. He had begun to embrace his fear, but the shadows lurking in the corners of his mind whispered doubt. Now that we know our fears, the woman projected, instantly redirecting attention, how do we action them? Growth cannot happen in a vacuum. You must challenge not only your inner fears but confront external ones too. Her words ignited a flurry of dynamic tension as Jake wrestled with the implications. Action. He realized that mere acknowledgement of fear was insufficient. To turn it into a catalyst, he had to initiate a confrontation, not just with himself but with the circumstances that had haunted him for so long. Jake sensed determination surfacing amidst the chaotic blend of emotions. He approached a young woman seated beside him, her eyes flickering with untold stories. "What is your fear?" he asked, sidestepping the discomfort in his chest. "Isolation," she answered softly, her voice carrying a tremor of strength. "For so long, I thought if I created barriers, I could shield myself from pain. But I ended up suffocating instead." Her admission refracted Jake's own internal struggles. He too had built walls to guard himself from those painful memories. "And what did you do to break those barriers?" Jake leaned in, drawn by her resilience. "I surrendered. I reached out, letting people in. It was terrifying, but I realized that connection is our strength, not our weakness. It took time, but it shattered the isolation." The threads of her experience wove through Jake's mind, igniting sparks of hope mingled with anxiety. He understood that connection demanded vulnerability, a brutal yet necessary risk. He felt the urge to ask her how he could implement her insights into his own life, but before he could articulate his thoughts, the woman pulled everyone's focus back. "Let us take this a step further. You will break into pairs and share what you intend to confront," she guided, pacing the floor like a lioness, commanding their focus. "Each pair will expose their vulnerabilities to one another, and collectively strategize how to overcome them." Fear gripped Jake again as he scanned the room for a partner. He could feel the old instinct kicking in, the urge to retreat, to hide. But something inside propelled him forward, a flicker of determination ignited by the knowledge that true growth lay on the other side of discomfort. He paired with the burly man from earlier. "I know you've faced demons," Jake began, the trembles evident in his voice. "But I want to know, how will you confront yours today?" The man hesitated, his expression revealing a complexity of emotions. "By taking control of my narrative. I've always been strongest when I confront my past rather than let it confront me." Jake's spirit surged with an almost reckless curiosity. "And how can I do that?" "I want to fearlessly define my narrative too." "You ask the right questions," the man replied thoughtfully. "Reflect on your past, but don't let it bludgeon you. Use it to carve out your future instead." Jake's heart thrummed with resonance. Each sentence felt like armor being forged, shaping him into a warrior ready for a battle. The connection spurred a flood of realizations. He held the pen that could rewrite his own story. As the exercise unfolded, Jake shared his fears, each confident word striking like a drumbeat, invigorating him with purpose. The more he unearthed, the more resolve replaced hesitation, his past no longer a shackle but a foundation of power beneath his feet. But just as Jake began to envision a renewed identity, a shadow flitted across his consciousness, the lurking awareness of the man who had issued the initial challenge. The words echoed ominously in his mind. You will have to pit your spirit against the mind of the hunter. The mounting pressure tightened around him, momentarily clouding his clarity. The boundaries of his newfound resolve felt tested. Be ready, the man warned, intensifying the air of anticipation that thickened. A true battle calls for total commitment, half measures won't suffice. Jake stood at the precipice, confronted by the shadows of his own design. The very act of confrontation loomed ahead, each heartbeat a resounding declaration that he would not back down. As he prepared to forge deeper connections with those around him, and acknowledge the truths of his journey, only one question deepened the well of uncertainty: would he emerge from this crucible emboldened, or would he risk losing everything he held close? The time was near to face the hunter of his fears. Would he rise, or would he crumble beneath the weight of his choices? The room transformed from a sanctum of shared fears to a battleground of expectations, each participant weighing the weight of their own ambitions against the collective vulnerability now carved into the air. Jake's heart raced as he tuned out the murmurs drifting around him, focusing instead on the cacophony of thoughts spiraling inside his mind. He felt lighter, yet the knowledge of what awaited him still loomed like an unrelenting storm cloud. Today, the woman's voice cut through the tension, is not just about listening to fears, it's about stepping into the arena. Her challenge hung heavily in the air, and Jake's resolve coiled tightly. He had to forge ahead, no matter how daunting the path might seem. He sought out the burly man again, whose eyes reflected understanding and sincerity. I need to address my isolation as well, Jake confessed. I've been walking through life as though I'm in a bubble, disconnected from everyone, even my own emotions. How can I truly connect with others if I can't even reach out? The man nodded, unfurling a slight smile. You have to break that bubble yourself. What's one thing you can do today to reach out? Jake's thoughts tangled, but suddenly he remembered the young woman's story. Vulnerability. It was the linchpin to connection, the very essence he had shied away from all his life. I can ask for help, he whispered almost to himself. I can ask someone for guidance, someone I've been hesitant to trust. Exactly, the man encouraged, enthusiasm flaring in his voice. Step outside of your comfort zone. It's terrifying, yes, but it's in that discomfort that we grow. Jake closed his eyes to visualize how freeing it would feel. The picture was clear: he would approach a mentor from his past, someone whose trust he had never fully embraced. The images danced in his mind, fragmented memories of missed opportunities. With every thought, a swell of courage ignited his determination. Okay, he breathed, focusing on the tension radiating through his core. I'll reach out. His words felt like an incantation, breaking the hollow silence that had settled around him. Jake felt a burgeoning spark within. It was the promise of action taking form, morphing his fears into something he could harness. Nearby, the woman took note, her interest piqued. You're beginning to discover your agency, Jake, she said, cutting through the group's energy. Each decision you make today is a step away from isolation and toward participation. What will your next step be? Jake's gaze shifted across the room, absorbing the faces of those around him, a collective of spirits joined by their struggle. I want to invite someone to share their journey with me, something about their life that pushes them to confront their fears too. He scanned the room, locking eyes with another participant, a man who had shared stories of loss and resilience during their earlier discussions. Jake felt compelled to bridge the gap that separated them. Hey! Jake called, taking a step toward him, heart thrumming. Can we talk? I've been thinking about what you said, and I'd like to hear more about your experiences. The man's eyes widened with surprise, but genuine warmth crept into his smile. Absolutely. I'd like that a lot. As they began to converse, something shifted inside Jake. It felt akin to shedding an old skin. Each shared insight opened a door into a world where connection thrived over isolation. Jake fought against the reality of potential rejection, but as they spoke, he felt walls cracking, vulnerabilities spilling out, and fears dissipating like sunlight piercing through gloom. Yet deep within him gnawed a persistent unease. He had taken steps toward connection, but the ever-present specter of the hunter loomed larger in his mind. The man's warning echoed like a drumbeat, each pulse reminding him that a real test lay ahead, a confrontation that would require not just dialogue but decisive action. Every battle defines who we are, he thought, mentally preparing for the inevitable reckoning. This was more than just about sharing fears, this was about stepping into his narrative fully. The moment of reckoning was closing in. Would he face the hunter's darkness with the light he was beginning to generate, or would those shadows swallow him whole? Jake's resolve hardened as he processed the weight of his next choices. The challenge had just escalated, and he could feel the tremors of uncertainty rumbling beneath him, an impending confrontation waiting to unveil itself. Jake stood in the warehouse's dim light, feeling the intensity of the moment swell within him. Each shadow cast against the walls echoed with his growing determination. He had approached the precipice of change not only within but in the life he wanted to create for himself and Lucy. As he faced the daunting specter of confrontation, it became evident that he was no longer merely a participant, he was transforming into an architect of his own fate. Now is the time to become the man you want Lucy to look up to, he whispered to himself, summoning the memories of the doubts that had chained him in the past. Every failure, each moment of stagnation melted into a reservoir of strength. He remembered the antique bracelet bearing the name Alex, the story that had pulled him into this tumultuous journey. It was time to honor that connection, both for Alex and for himself. The sound of laughter from the group momentarily distracted Jake, the cohesion among them a testament to the growth they were experiencing. But even amid camaraderie, the urgency of his mission gripped him. He scanned the faces around him, their vulnerabilities laid bare, and felt both their weight and their empowering potential. Would he fold under pressure, or would he rise? Embrace the uncertainties, Jake, the woman had said earlier. They define how far you are willing to go. Steeling himself, he began crafting his plan. Not just to confront the darkness he'd glimpsed but to prepare for war, a war he would inevitably face depending on the truth he chose to unveil. He knew now that true strength came not just from hardening his exterior but from stripping bare the layers that had shielded his heart. I'll need allies, he thought, recognizing the power of collaboration. The more he understood the essence of trust and vulnerability, the more he felt prepared to reach out and invite the group into his battle for Alex. Before addressing the whole group, he approached Hank, who had lingered at the edge. I'm ready to confront the hunter, but I can only do this if we stick together, Jake asserted, determination radiating like sunlight. The fear they had once shared morphed into something tangible. Hank's brow furrowed slightly, then brightened. You mean it? You'll face them with me? There was a flicker of genuine pride in his voice, a camaraderie built from years of tension and unresolved attitudes. I will, Jake confirmed, hope swelling in his chest. Together, we stand stronger. It was time to transcend the story that had bound them in shadow. Jake gathered the group, his heart pounding with urgency yet buoyed by the weight of collective purpose. I've wrestled with fears and isolation, but they taught me that we cannot fight this alone. We need to confront the unknown together for Alex, for our stories, and for the lives we seek to reclaim. The response was a swell of support, nods of understanding replacing previous apprehension. They were ready to forge a new path, a step into the arena of confrontation armed with honesty and unity. As they each walked out of the warehouse, the night air kissed their faces, a reminder that life continued beyond their self-imposed barriers. Recognition of their struggles merged into a mission that felt almost liberating. The next day dawned bright but heavy with anticipation. They faced the day with renewed conviction, yet Jake understood that the true trial awaited him. He could hear the whispers from the shadows. He knew all too well the threat lurking nearby. In the days that rolled ahead, Jake worked not just as an advocate for Alex but transformed himself into a catalyst of change. Each encounter carved trust into the fabric of their intentions. He spoke at town meetings, shared Alex's story, unveiled the truth shrouded in deception. The town's narrative began shifting, slowly but undeniably. People stood beside him, rallying to support Alex's cause, echoing the need for accountability and justice. Jake's courage inspired others to find their voices, finding strength amid vulnerability. At last, the showdown with Hank S. Revelations came to a head where Jake could confront the orchestrators of deceit. The very systems that sought to silence Alex attempted to suffocate his voice as well. But Jake stood resolute, a newfound warrior fueled by the tapestry of connection they had woven together. As Jake faced those who once orchestrated Alex's downfall, a familiar sensation surged, his fear transferred into sheer energy. "I'm here to reclaim our narratives," he declared, voice echoing through the chambers that once felt accusatory. "Your darkness will not prevail. We are stronger than your shadows." And in that moment, Jake discovered what it meant to be both a protector and a leader, a father who embodied strength for Lucy's sake and carried the resilience built amidst the trials of his journey. He had vanquished the demons of his past, grown into a figure both fierce and compassionate. As the dust settled on the aftermath of the confrontation, Jake returned home, greeted by the warm embrace of his daughter. With Lucy curling into his side, he felt a profound peace. He had achieved what he never thought possible, transformed fear into purpose and built a legacy worth living. In that heartening silence, the echo of Alex's name lingered, a reminder of what yielded true triumph. Jake had proven he could not only battle the darkness but illuminate a path forward, a new story forged from the fires of adversity, blooming like an unfiltered sunrise. Now it was time to act. If you've resonated with this story of resilience and empowerment, you need to subscribe right now to keep up with these exclusive emotional journeys. Don't wait even one more second, leave a like to feed the algorithm and spread the word of personal transformation. Comment below your thoughts and your theories on Jake's journey, your insights matter. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion unfold. Your support makes a huge difference. Join us in creating a community that champions overcoming fears and harnessing personal growth.